Can you can you hear me now? Okay.
It's looking north. It's looking north toward Murray. From Beechwood Boulevard.
May 2024. Oh, maybe that's when the slide was.
That's when the sign went up there.
I've learned since the date photographs, because I wasn't at first. So I'm going to start, and because of a number of things that are going on with our board, I know if you belong to the Squirrel Hill Historical Society, you received word that our president's wife has died, which in Florida, so he's not here, and Todd Miller, our program scheduler, isn't here either because of the death in his family, so it's kind of sad right now. So, I'm Helen Wilson, for those of you who, if this is your first time. I'm Vice President of the Squirrel Hill Historical Society, and other board members today are, let's see, neither Todd Miller nor the other program scheduler, Toby Chapman, aren't here. Stanley Klein is our membership coordinator, is not here. Tony Indivina is our very detail-oriented email coordinator, and also president of FONLH, which is Friends of Neil Loghouse. Let's see. Our treasurer is Evelyn Young. Don't see her. Audrey Glickman is our media specialist. She's doing our recording. Other board members, Todd Wilson, right here, and Charles Suckup. Okay, he's not here tonight. Okay, our website manager is Janine Michael. And all Squirrel Hill Historical Society members are welcome to volunteer to be on the board or come early to help us set up or submit articles for our newsletter. I'm the editor. And there's one other thing. Oh yeah, you can also suggest ideas for our programs. So, just very quickly before I go into the May talk, in June, we're having The Story Behind the Smile, A History of Eaton Park. And that'll be by Lynn McMahon, and the author of The Story Behind the Smile, Eaton Park. So come and hear how this local company got started and has blossomed into a lot of Eaton Parks around here. And on July 9th, Pittsburgh's Historic Ballparks by Mark Fatla. So, and we don't usually have a program in August, so we decided to have a member social because I've been a member of the Squirrel Hill Historical Society for a long time, but I don't know a lot of the members. So if you aren't on vacation in August, come and join us for a social. Okay, so my program tonight, and I'm really sorry, I'm very disappointed that our robotics director couldn't be here because I was really looking forward to the talk. But I was a teacher, that we have a saying, monitor and adjust, so here I am, and I'm going to give a talk on looking at Squirrel Hill's history through its buildings. Anybody know where that is? Yeah, it's really easy. Let's see if this works. Yeah, it's under the Forward Avenue underpass under the Parkway East as it goes into the Squirrel Hill Tunnel. That's the first building. I'm only going to say a sentence or two about every building because I put a lot of them in. I guess I kind of got carried away. But anyway, that is a very rare building in Pittsburgh. There's only a few of these. That's the Squirrel Hill Tunnel Ventilation Building built in 1949. Here's the same view in 1921. That's Simon Gertie's log cabin. It was demolished in the late 1920s. Now, when the planners of the Parkway East were trying to decide which route to take through Squirrel Hill, they literally went through Squirrel Hill because the options would have been to do a huge road cut, which would have wiped out a lot of the neighborhood, or gone around the hill, which would have made the route a lot longer. So they decided to go through the hill and use the Saline Street Valley, which was not as heavily populated at the time, to make those viaducts that go into the tunnel. So that bridge, that's not the Greenfield Beechwood Boulevard Bridge, the one that was just replaced a few years ago. That was the second Murray Avenue Bridge. It was sort of a twin to the Greenfield Bridge. It was built in 1913, replaced in 1978. And here's the scene today, the third Murray Avenue Bridge. The Gertie House was located just to the left of this picture. And that is the, I guess it's True Leave, Pittsburgh marijuana dispensary there. That building has a long history, and I didn't even research that one yet. So this is going to be a sequence of maps that show the development of that area. This is 1890. The green the green square shows where the Gertie cabin had been. Notice what else is on this map. DuPont Powder House. Well, in 1890 and for some years afterwards, there was a lot of blasting. You know, the DuPonts were into explosives. That's how they got their start. And there was a lot of excavation and blasting and leveling of land going on in this whole area. Where that DuPont Powder House was located, you can see that it is on the hillside, right almost above where the Parkway ramps take you downtown. It was on a hillside so that if there was an explosion, the explosion would go out sideways. Here is a 1932 picture of a DuPont explosives truck coming up Browns Hill Road. In 1910, there's the cabin, log cabin still there. Notice Forward Avenue. It goes this way, down, sort of follows where Saline is today. But Saline comes up this way and just stops. Here is, this was originally William Pitt Boulevard, then Beechwood Avenue, so that's why Beechwood Boulevard's in parentheses. 1923, you can see that development is happening. Properties are being bought up and divided into smaller lots. Development. This is 1923. A lot of the houses in Squirrel Hill started to be built in the 20s and 30s. The cabin's still there. And then when you get to 1939, look at all the houses now being built. The cabin is gone. There's a gas station there. And there's more gas stations. And Forward now goes down to Beechwood, and Saline Street is given this alignment. Saline Street, the same location today. There's the green squares where the Gertie House was, and the other two, the blue squares, those are all where the gas stations were. And if you look, there is still the old Saline Street alignment, and unfortunately a long time ago they decided it wasn't needed anymore, and now there's no way to get to Squirrel Hill from Browns Hill Road without going through residential streets. So it would have been so nice to come up, go on Saline, and then just turn up here to go up to Squirrel Hill, but you can't do that. So, for those of you who don't know exactly what Squirrel Hill looks like, this is a map of Pittsburgh's neighborhoods. Squirrel Hill is either one or two, depending on who's counting, because the city divides it for tax purposes into Squirrel Hill North and Squirrel Hill South. But if you ask somebody where they're from, they'll say, oh, I'm from Squirrel Hill. So anyway, it has an area of almost 4 square miles. It's bigger than a lot of municipalities around here. and it has around 26,500 people. It's so large, it has over 200 streets, roads, avenues, lanes, boulevards, terraces, courts, places, ways, bridges, and even that interstate highway and tunnel. And I have to thank our Squirrel Hill Society member, Lauren Winkler, for those statistics. She's a professional mapping specialist. I'm only going to talk, in this particular talk, I guess I could call this one part one, the main streets of Forbes and Forward, which are east-west, and Murray and Shady, which are north-south. First inhabitants of Squirrel Hill were Eastern Woodland Indians, and they lived in wigwams, and there's wigwams there. They didn't have any known permanent settlements. They used the hill as a seasonal hunting ground, and the deer are still here. So, yeah, and the squirrels. One source mentions a deserted old Indian fort in 9 Mile Run Valley, and perhaps that was a temporary village inside a stockade of sharpened upright logs, as shown in this diorama, which is in Bedford Village. It's believed the Native Americans were the first to give the name Squirrel Hill to this hill. European settlement began on the hill in the 1760s. Most of the newcomers were Scots-Irish, British, and German. In the 1800s, wealthy people from Pittsburgh, downtown area, built country estates on the hill. It was already starting to get smoky and dirty down there, so if you could have a nice big country estate, why not? On this 1851 map, the black squares represent log cabins and houses, so you can see that this area was not densely populated in the 1800s. The red line shows the border of Squirrel Hill today. And you see the word Peebles, P-E-E-B-L-E-S. Squirrel Hill was part of Peebles Township until 1868 when it was annexed by Pittsburgh. So you might recognize some names on this map. Wilkins, that's not a log cabin, that's his mansion. He was a very renowned judge, and he held some federal offices. We did have a talk on him, a very renowned person. Murdoch, as in Murdoch Farms, that was a nursery, orchard. He was famous for his roses. Then you have Phillips, Douglas, Ford, McCaslin, Fleming, Browns, and Woods, all just names of roads today, streets and roads, but in the old days, those were landowners. So just a little bit about the Woods. John Woods and his father laid out downtown Pittsburgh, so that's Woods Street downtown. But he built a stone house in Hazelwood in 1792. His house is now the Woods House Historic Pub. And you might be thinking, wait a minute, that's Hazelwood, that's not Squirrel Hill. But when Pittsburgh annexed Peebles Township, it used the Saline Street ravine as a ward boundary. So you can see, there's the whole hill, and you can see it's high ground, was surrounded by valleys. But before 1868, before the city divided the hill into wards, people lived on it. You lived on the hill, you didn't live in it. So there's where the Woods House is located. It is on the hill. Today, only one authentic log building is left in Squirrel Hill, and that's the Neal Log House on the golf course in Shenley Park. It was built in 1795 and carefully restored in 2023 by Tony and your stellar group of people from all the preservation societies in Pittsburgh. And Charlie is a descendant of the guy who built that house. So Charlie Stewart, descendant of Robert Neal. located right there. And I have to say that this map was another creation of Lauren Winkler's. This is a digital map of the contours of the land. It's not a satellite map. So Squirrel Hill was slow to develop because most travelers to Pittsburgh prefer to take the easier route through the wide valley around the hill. And I didn't put Lawrenceville on there, but it should have been on there, yeah. So I was thinking about that. Would you rather take a nice easy route up through a valley or a long, long route down the river and up, or go up over a steep hill with sliding, like landslides and ravines and creeks? So most people went up to get to downtown Pittsburgh, went through this nice wide valley. You can see all the communities that developed along the valley, but Squirrel Hill remained, it just remained rural for a long time into the late 1800s. East Liberty in 1890, Squirrel Hill in 1890, and the Hasley Farm was near 9 Mile Run Valley. Throughout the 1800s, wealthy people from downtown continued to buy farms for country estates. Some built mansions, and others, like the Shenleys, rented property to tenant farmers. And that 22, the 22nd Ward became the 14th Ward in 1911. They redid the numbering. Everything changed when electric trolleys came. And they came to Squirrel Hill in 1893. Trolleys could climb those steep slopes, and trolley bridges could span deep valleys. Real estate developers flocked in because of all this wonderful free land. It was, well, not free, but it was farmland, and it didn't have any houses on it. So, hey, look, you can, even now if you ride along the turnpike, you can see the developments happening on the farms. That was what was happening in Squirrel Hill. That's not Forbes Avenue. The first trolley route ran across a trestle from John Hare Street in South Oakland through what's now Carnegie Mellon University, up to Northumberland Street, and all the way down Murray Avenue. And you can see the first temporary Shenley Bridge. Right here, this is the first Forbes Avenue bridge. It couldn't bear the weight of trolleys. The trolleys had to cut, and the railroads would not let trolleys cross its tracks. So this trestle goes up into what's now Carnegie Mellon. Here's the railroad tracks, Boundary Street. This route suggests that Northumberland Street, which is a few blocks up that way, was originally planned to be the business district. That's why the police station and some shops are located on Northumberland. A few years later, the trolley line was changed to Forbes Avenue because a new bridge was built that could bear the weight of those heavy trolleys. Mansions were built along its length. So here's Forbes. It was Forbes Street till 1957, going up the hill towards Squirrel Hill. You can see Rodef Shalom back here. This is Christopher McGee's mansion, future site of the Bureau of Mines. Now, Carnegie Mellon's Hamburg Hall. Here's the scene. This is a few years old, this picture, because Tepper Quad is now finished. But you can see the massive change in that area. Today, only a few of the mansions along Forbes Avenue are left. Among them, the Pitcairn Mansion, later Theta Xi Fraternity House, which is now Alumni Hall on the Carnegie Mellon campus. That's on by Morwood. Thank you. Had a brain thing there. Sorry. And here's the John Worthington Mansion at Forbes Avenue and Murdoch Street, and that was built around 1909. Temple Sinai purchased the mansion in 1946 and formally dedicated it in 1949. Temple Sinai congregation continued to grow, and land was purchased beside the mansion. An addition was completed in 1957, and a new sanctuary was added in 1969. Because of the trolleys, substantial houses began to line Forbes and Murray Avenues in the early 1900s. This house stood near the corner of Forbes and Murray. And the Rite Aid parking lot is there now. And it has a Welcome to Squirrel Hill sign on the building. So I know I've showed these two, this slide and the next one a while ago, but I really like them because it just shows that the trolley line through Squirrel Hill was a major factor in its development. Streetcar lines through the property to every portion of the city, directly on main line between the city and Homestead. And this one, every man's ambition is to own a home on Squirrel Hill. Every woman's heart beats faster at the mere suggestion that she may possibly live on Squirrel Hill someday. I think that's still true. Anyway, downtown was smoky, dirty, grimy, densely populated. It wasn't a pleasant place to live. So here was Squirrel Hill, new houses, gracious lots, easy transportation to your place of business. So why not move there if you could? In 1910, 3 trolley lines came up Forbes from downtown. First line went south down Murray Avenue, that was the first one. It went to Homestead and McKeesport, bustling steel towns. And then, second one went out to Braddock and East Pittsburgh, other industrial towns. And the third one went up north, up Shady Avenue to East Liberty. And East Liberty was a thriving town, a rival of downtown Pittsburgh since the early years. So that's why Squirrel Hill became a hub, causing the business district to develop. And that building, I guess you can't see, but that is the first post office, right on Forbes. Murray Avenue was a residential street in the early 1900s, and a few houses still exist. If you look up, here is Key Bank at Murray Avenue and Darlington Road, and in 1937 you can see the front porch on that building, which was replaced by that addition to Key Bank, but the house is still there. The first automobiles came around 1905 and became common by the 1920s. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh's population increased 76% in that same time. Congestion on Pittsburgh streets got really bad, so the city constructed wide boulevards to bypass congested areas. Beechwood Boulevard, Bigelow Boulevard, and here's Boulevard of the Allies, and this picture is at Grant Street downtown in 1930. Boulevard of the Allies, when it opened in 1922, made getting to Squirrel Hill from downtown in the Hill District very easy. So many Eastern European Jews, especially from Lithuania, used the boulevard to move from the Hill District to new houses in the central and southern parts of Squirrel Hill. Most houses in Squirrel Hill, including mine, were built in the 1920s and 1930s. Squirrel Hill District, an affluent area which had the highest amount of automobile ownership and use in the city, had its fastest rate of development in the 1920s, especially after direct roadway connections with the downtown were made in 1922. And if you look at these ads, Squirrel Hill, if it had all these cars, the cars had to be purchased, they had to be filled with gas, they had to be maintained. So a number of automobile dealerships and service stations opened here, and they all had maintenance departments. There's just some of, I'm not going to read them, but you can see some of the names you might recognize. And one way to tell where a car dealership had been is because in a few places in Squirrel Hill there are really wide sidewalks or parking lots, like Lord Duncan's Cleaner, which was Samson Buick, or the new Dumpling House area, which was a Chrysler Plymouth dealer, and then and a Constant in Pontiac was up on Forbes by Shady. That's where Starbucks is, and NovaCare. And so if you see this construction type where there's these big parking lots or areas like this, then that sort of signals that there was a car dealership there. That odd, long building above Get-Go at Forward and Murray Avenues was once Sampson Buick's garage. You know, it's this one. It's a very strange looking building. And it did continue to be a repair shop, but I don't know if it's still open. I don't know. We couldn't. Tony and I tried to find out. We couldn't figure it out. But anyway, that is on the maps as Sampson's Buick's garage. The house at Forbes and Murray was replaced by a Gulf station in 1935. But it wasn't just any old Gulf station. It was the world's first express stop station. Why express stop? Well, you could get gas there, but you could also buy a car, a Ford. You could maintain your car, get it repaired, buy tires. Whatever you needed, it was all there. This was your express stop. The express stop station was replaced by Black's Gulf Station around 1969. And that was demolished in 2003. And the corner now has a modern building on it. I'm going to take a look at the other three corners of Forbes and Murray. There's Sixth Presbyterian Church, opened in 1903, and it's still there and has been beautifully cleaned. The church across the street, Asbury Methodist Church, just about quite as large, was demolished in 1967. Squirrel Hill branch of Carnegie Library is on that corner now. Other Christian churches have been demolished or repurposed in Squirrel Hill as their congregations dwindled. Third Presbyterian Church was located where the parking lot of the Children's Institute is on Shady Avenue. So that was another huge church, completely gone now. St. Philomena's Roman Catholic Church is now Community Day School, a Jewish day school. Mount Olivet Presbyterian Church was on Phillips Avenue. It was demolished in 1911 to make room for Colfax School. Fourth Corner still has its original buildings. We're back on Forbes and Murray. By 1916, the Orpheum Theater was there. It was the first theater in Squirrel Hill, and it showed silent films until around 1925. And this, right here, you can recognize that on the same building today. It's still there. Buildings in the corner, as I said, were still there. Only the businesses in them have changed. In this picture from '67, you see an Isley's. Squirrel Hill Cafe is still there, and so is the newsstand. But Sun Drug is now Cold Stone Creamery. And the Orpheum Theater had a large, airy room upstairs. And in 1917, the newly formed Squirrel Hill congregation rented that room in the Orpheum for high holidays. That was the beginning of Beth Shalom, the first Jewish congregation founded right here in Squirrel Hill. Didn't move from anywhere else. It was founded here. And that's the window that from that large, airy room. The Squirrel Hill congregation adopted the name Beth Shalom, House of Peace, in 1919, and then purchased land for a synagogue at the corner of Shady and Beacon. That's a drawing of the proposed synagogue. Here it is, 1923. It was the first synagogue to be built in Squirrel Hill. And as the congregation grew, the Beth Shalom building was expanded from, there's 1923, 1931, added this larger sanctuary addition here in 1967. That picture's from 1970. And then in 1996, there was a fire. I think a lot of people probably remember that. I know I do. And it was repaired, and here it is today. Many Jewish synagogues, schools, and organizations erected buildings in Squirrel Hill. Here are just a few of them. There's Shar Torah, Tree of Life, Paul Zedek. And in 2000, 12 and 13, the University of Pittsburgh Jewish Studies program did a study on Squirrel Hill, called it the Squirrel Hill Project, and they wanted to know why the Jewish character of Squirrel Hill remained when Jewish communities in urban areas, most of them moved out to the suburbs. Why didn't Squirrel Hill change? And what they found was that Jewish Squirrel Hill is the envy of other Jewish places because of the interconnectedness of the people and resources and their willingness to work together. And they had panel discussions, lectures. This was a walking tour, and you can see just in this walking tour, this is just half of it, shows all the different Jewish organizations that we could have toured on this very, very hot day in May. Jewish Community Center near Forbes and Murray grew out of the Irene Kaufman settlement in the Hill District. The first Irene Kaufman Settlements facility, the first one was on Forward in the building that housed Forward Lanes. And it's now the Squirrel Hill Sports Bar. Some high school kids wanted to have a place where they could go and just relax and play and keep themselves from getting into trouble by roaming the streets. So they decided to get the local civic leaders to incorporate this boys club and charter it, and then this was the facility. But it was just not a very perfect place to have it because it was dark and small. So very soon after, it moved Ike's, after they bought, I just got a little bit mixed up here. Okay, it took over the space. The Irene Kaufman settlement took over the space occupied by the Squirrel Hills Boys Club in 1943. And it soon moved to a house, and it was just a big, big house at 5738 Forbes Avenue. That was too small. The house was demolished in 1958, and this new building opened in 1959. And this is, right here, is the only picture we have of that building. So if any of you have a picture of the interior or exterior of this building, let us scan it and we'll give it back to you. But that's the only picture so far that I've found of it. The name Jewish Community Center was adopted in 1974, and an expansion to the Jewish Community Center opened in 1980. So that's a very simplified history. There's a lot more steps that went on, but that just gives you an idea of how the Jewish Community Center evolved. Here it is today. It opened in stages between 1987 and 88. Now, people have told me this, and they're reliable people. I haven't seen it in writing, but it's been said that the exterior color scheme of the Jewish Community Center was chosen to make Black's Gulf Station kind of disappear. So you'd see the Jewish Community Center and not the Gulf Station. So it's a visual trick. So whether it's true or not, it certainly is true in the pictures. I'm going to take another look at this location that's now Key Bank. If you look at the whole picture, it shows that by the 1930s, the business district has developed. It's got stores, restaurants, movie theaters, bowling alleys, laundries, and other businesses. The Manor Theater opened in 1922. And there, we're going to take a closer look at it. Here's what it looked like when it opened in 1922. Why English tutor? Well, a newspaper article announcing the opening of the theater said, after a profound study of the location, Mr. Clark decided on a blending of the Elizabethan and Tudor styles. As a result, the theater harmonizes with the surrounding handsome residences. And if you walk around the side streets of the business district, you'll see a lot of English Tudor, Elizabethan style houses. So he just wanted this theater to harmonize with them. Manor Theater always had stores in the building. And I'm showing the book Perseverance. We did have a talk by Lee Keikel a few months ago about her father, who was a Holocaust survivor. He had a jewelry store on the second floor of the Manor Theater way back in, was it 1920s? Somewhere, yeah. So, you can see this picture, didn't date it, but there's Friedman's, there's National Record Mart, so that would put it probably in the 60s. But what was interesting about this building is sometime after 1990, the building to the left of the manor, and that's this one right here, was incorporated into the theater building and another dormer gable was added. So in 1990, you have one dormer gable, the building, and here, now Barnes & Noble closed in 2009, but here's 1 and 2. And you can't even tell, unless you really look closely, that that was 2 buildings. It was done so well. The space has been used by various stores and restaurants, and most recently by the CMU Robotics Institute, and hopefully we will reschedule the talk that was supposed to be tonight by the director. Citizens Bank across Darlington from the Manor opened in 1965 as a branch of Mellon Bank. Now, I don't know what you think of this building, but it's significant because it's one of the few examples of mid-20th century modern architecture in Squirrel Hill, which makes it historically significant. And it had originally been a gas station. Another building in Squirrel Hill also had an almost unnoticeable addition, the Verizon Switch Station, originally the Bell Telephone Exchange at the corner of Murray Avenue and Pecasset. You can see, and again, this is thanks to Lauren Winkler, who had, this is part of their telegram telephone talk. But you can see very, very faintly that this part of the building is just slightly lighter in color. Everything else matches perfectly. And you can see, here's the original building, here's the addition. Now this building is only a third in use right now. And the Squirrel Hill Urban Coalition has been studying what they can do to repurpose the rest of it. It's still an active switch station, but it's fully automated. Thank you. Automated now, and there's very, very few people actually working in the building. So while we're down at that corner of Murray Forward and Pecasset, here is the Moorfield Apartment Hotel. Until the 1920s, Squirrel Hill had mostly single-family houses. Large apartment buildings were thought to be for people who, they couldn't afford a house, So, but developer Thomas Watkins built an elegant apartment complex with a population density that is believed to be the reason the Squirrel Hill Business District grew and prospered. Without the population density of this development, there might not have been a business district. Because Watkins just didn't build the apartment hotel. I'm not going to read all of those, but you can see apartment houses, smaller ones. Everything up behind the Moorfield is part of that Watkins development. It was massive. We think of developments today as a new thing, but here Watkins was doing it in the 20s. So notice that says Horwitz Motor Cells. So that was sort of where the Levin Clubhouse had been in the parking garage, which was a brand new idea, a parking garage. If you were very wealthy and you had cars and you wanted to live in this apartment hotel, where would you put your car? That's why Watkins decided to build this 5-story parking garage. And also, he built a power plant that had refrigeration as well as heating, unheard of at the time. And that's a picture of the power plant before they covered it with concrete and sealed it up. This was just before they started to build these buildings, flats on forward. And there's the last part of the smokestack kind of encased around the building. So flats on forward is one of the very newest buildings in Squirrel Hill. As the business district grew, storefronts were built in front of some of the houses on Murray Avenue. If you go to Minio's Pizza, look up behind the house, behind the store, and you can see these houses. Some houses were even lifted up and moved back so storefronts could be added. And that's Murray Avenue between Beacon and Hobart. The houses are still there. This picture is a little old, but the storefronts, some of them have changed, but you can see that there's the storefronts added. Here's a building that you probably have seen a million times, but you never gave it a second thought. The CA West apartment and office building on Murray Avenue. It's right across from the Giant Eagle, up in the business district. What's that? Had bowling alleys in it. Bowling alleys, Murray Beacon alleys, first floor and basement. And by the way, it also had the post office. Post office moved there. More about that post office. There it is pictured. The building will be a neo-Grecian design with exterior walls of brick and transite. At second story, wood and marble trim, wood cornice and windows, with marble and metal entrance. It really is a gorgeous building inside, even after it was kind of rehabbed. But anyway, what's transite? I had to look that up because I never heard of it. It was like a concrete composite to look like stone. Originally had asbestos in it, but mainly it was meant to look like stone but made of concrete. And that's the cornerstone. There's the building today. It has quiet elegance. But the post office houses one of Squirrel Hill's most significant art treasures, a New Deal mural painted by Alan Thompson in 1942. It's entitled History of Squirrel Hill. And if you haven't seen it, the next time you go to the post office, just take a look at it up on the wall of the lobby. And it goes all the way from modern days of 1942 back to the days when there were Native American raids on settlers. Back to the West Building. In 1963, the bowling alley became Funland. Anybody remember that? Okay, I don't, but before my time. But anyway, that place to have fun, have parties. And then it became Heads Together, which I remember. It closed in 2009. I have 0 pictures of it. So if any of you have any pictures of Heads Together, let us have them to scan. Businesses in the West Building have changed through the years. In 2023, the basement became Steel City Vintage. And you see that's no typo. The store sells vintage t-shirts, posters, and other memorabilia. Names and purposes of Squirrel Hill's buildings have changed through the years, but the buildings seem to just stay there. They just change the buildings over and over. The building beside the West Building was first the Princess Theater, then the Beacon Theater, and then the Guild, then Galifte's Restaurant, the one with the wonderful desserts, a unique eatery, and it's now Friendship Circle, which offers a full range of social activities to youth and adults with diverse abilities. In the 1940s, the upper rooms in the small building next to the Guild Theater were the Beacon Club, a gambling joint. And that explains this picture, because those guys, they're just not loitering, but a friend of mine said when he was a high school kid, if he was loitering on this street corner, the police would say, keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. And meanwhile, the cars kept moving, and they'd drive up, and there would be an exchange, and then they'd drive off, and another car would come. So I think that explains what all these guys are doing out here. So, okay, Friendship Circle bought that building in 2017 and turned the upper room into the Beacon, a place focusing on wellness for high school students. And below is Bunny Bakes. It's a bakery and coffee shop owned and run by Friendship Circle. Many of the buildings in Squirrel Hill have stories besides stories. For example, famous actor and dancer Gene Kelly had 4 different dance studios in 3 Squirrel Hill buildings. And he also did productions for Beth Shalom. So his first studio was in the Marlborough building. I never knew that that was what it was called until there was an article about some sewer work being done there, but that's the Marlborough building. And then he had 2 studios in this, I think that's one of the prettiest buildings in Squirrel Hill, right on Forbes. It doesn't have a name now. Most buildings in Squirrel Hill, most of the bigger ones do have names. This one doesn't, it just goes by the addresses of the businesses, but on the old maps it was called the Cayman Building. And his last studio was in the Beacon Apartment Hotel on Munhall Road, which is off of Beacon. We have no pictures of it, we just have a matchbook cover that somebody lent us. And so there's what you can get an idea of what it looked like. And it was replaced by the Imperial House. And this is this is on Munhall Road. So more about the Caymans. Herman Cayman was an immigrant from Lithuania who lived in the Hill District. He started the Cayman Realty Company in 1916. In the 1920s, he began buying up properties to develop in Squirrel Hill. He had to sometimes use a fake name to avoid being turned down because he was a Jew. He was a major real estate developer in Squirrel Hill. He built houses and apartments on Marlborough, Darlington, Malvern, Inverness, Fair Oaks, Whiteman, Cayman, Cavote, and Beechwood. And you can see just from Marlborough to Forbes how many of these properties say Cayman. Family members continued to develop the business district. So there's the Cayman building, and you can, get back to that. You can see it right here, Cayman building. But look, Cayman Motor Company, Chevrolet, Cayman Company used car lot. There's the dealership, Cayman Chevrolet, right here. And that's where the parking lot is now, behind Dunkin' Donuts. That's right where the parking lot is, and here's the gas stations. It was owned by S. Irwin Cayman from 1931 to 1963. Here is the used car lot, right here, and the Cayman building is there. And I have yet to figure out what this guy's looking at. Probably some kind of, maybe a newspaper, I don't know. I blew it up as far as I could, and I still couldn't tell. So Cayman Chevrolet in 1949 moved down to where the gas stations were and built this beautiful new showroom. And that was replaced by the Forum Theater. It opened in 1963 and closed in 1978, and we have no pictures of it. So again, we're looking for pictures. And this was a picture taken after it closed. But you can still see what it looked like, because if you go in the back, in the parking lot, there is the facade that was also on the front with these concrete roundels embedded into the walls. So you can see a little bit of the Forum there. Forum extended down to the bagel factory, and we think that the marquee was where Caldwell Bankers is now, but we're not sure. It could have been the next one. We don't really have an exact idea. And the Forum was replaced by Forbes Shady Commons, and it got a facelift in 2018. And today, Cayman Realty manages over 400 properties across 44 states and Puerto Rico. Dan Cayman joined the family real estate business, In 1969, he became president of the commercial side of the business, and the Daniels G. Kamen and Carol L. Kamen Fund was established in 2011 as a way to carry on the family's legacy. Why I'm mentioning that is because in January 2024, it was announced that Dan and Carol donated $65 million to the Carnegie Science Center. Dan said it was because his childhood visits to Buell Planetarium inspired his lifelong love of science. So they're going to rename the Carnegie Science Center after them. So we're winding down here from past to present. Here's 9 Mile Run Valley before slag dumping began in the 1920s. This is from Commercial Road going down, looking down towards the river. It was said to be such a beautiful valley that that would have been a perfect place for a park back then. Well, instead of the park, you got slag. It was dumped from the Homestead Steelworks beginning in the 1920s. By the time the dumping ended in 1972, 238 acres of the valley were covered by 200 million tons of slag, 120 feet high. A moonscape. Several proposals were advanced for reusing this slag dump after the dumping ended. They were going to do a ramp from the Homestead Grace Bridge up to the Parkway, or they were going to put a low-income housing project there, or they were going to put a shopping center there. You know, we were following it as these things were developing. But instead, after careful and intensive testing, we get Somerset at Frick Park, which is a beautiful residential community. It was begun in 2001. So, if you want to learn more about Squirrel Hill's buildings, Lauren and I have put together a driving tour of Squirrel Hill, which can be found on our website. And this is the first screen, the opening screen, and then you see the map. There's 56 different places you can stop and learn about the buildings. You don't have to do that in one day. It takes about, I think it's somewhere between 14 and 17 miles. And it's up and down and up and down and up and down, and you can get really dizzy. But anyway, this is what it looks like as you scroll down. It's meant to be used as you drive, not as you're driving. If there's somebody in the passenger seat, you could be following the route, the person in the passenger seat. But for example, here's what the Alderdice stop looks like. And meanwhile, others are also keeping Squirrel Hill's building history alive. The Red Door, which was a book about the Squirrel Hill Cafe, was written by Jan Kavrak and Leslie Ann McElroy in 2020. And we did have an interview with Jan Kavrak that's one of our talks, so you can access it on our videos. So one of the best ways to find out about the history of the buildings of Squirrel Hill is through the newspapers. We are lucky to have issues from 1935 to 1970, which we had digitized, and they're now online through our website or through Historic Pittsburgh. But we don't have the Squirrel Hill Newses from 1929 to 1934, and we don't have the ones after 1970. We also only have 3 Squirrel Hill Gazettes. 2 of them are those long, thin, glossy ones, and then the third one is when it went to a newspaper format. Only 1 Pittsburgh East, and only a few Alderdice Forwards. So, if you have any of these old newspapers, we would love to have them to scan and digitize. So you can contact us either through our website or through our email. And this is the end of the story. I'm sorry, it's the end of the presentation, but not the end of the story. And any questions? Yes?
The Simon Gertie log cabin, how come that was never declared like a historical monument or preserve it like the O'Neill Log House?
Well, 2 reasons. First of all, he was a persona non grata in Squirrel Hill because he defected to the British and then did raids on the settlers here. And second, it was demolished in the 1920s, so that was before any one of these other log cabins was thought to be worth saving. You know, they were falling down. Even the other one in Shenley Park, the Martin cabin, is a total reconstruction. So they're all gone. Yes?
Was there anything besides legend to tie the Gertie cabin to Gertie? I mean, was it just word of mouth?
There's an article about the people that were living in that cabin at the time. And we also, when we did the Simon Gertie historical marker on Beechwood Boulevard, we did extensive research on the property that he owned. And his property extended up to Pecusset. So, but we based our research on this particular article that said that these people were living in the house, that there was still, you could still see the bullet holes in the wood. So, yeah. Now, John Turner, his half-brother lived up more towards Frank Street in Greenfield, so we have a picture of that house as well. Yes?
I just want to say, the Bell Telephone building you mentioned in Squirrel Hill, there's one in Homestead that looks exactly like that on 9th and Ann Street. It's about half the size, and that still is being used too. You still see Bell Verizon trucks parked in there.
Yeah, they still use them, but since they're automated, there's maybe one or two people working in them, so bigger ones are being repurposed with condominiums and apartments. So they're looking at what else this building can be used for. Yes?
If you just wanted to rephrase the questions or the comments for those on the chat.
Oh, okay. I will. Yes?
You were kind in your description of the Beacon Club. When I was growing up, my parents told me to absolutely avoid it because it was the home of thieves and gamblers.
And were you one of the teenagers lurking on the sidewalk?
Sometimes.
So I told Stan that I would mention him, and I forgot that I didn't have anything about the Cold War battery in Frick Park, and Stan told me some stories about being allowed to play on the Nike missiles. So, but I didn't put that in this one. It's going to be in an article in the Squirrel Hill magazine.
Thank you.
So, but yeah, you have some interesting stories. And you know what's interesting about the gambling is that people tell me stories, and I'll say, "I'll forget that. Would you write it down?" And they say, so. Anyone else? Yes.
That steam plant down there at Watkins, the Marfield Apartments, it heated the Marfield Apartments, all the houses back there, crossed Forward Avenue and heated Eldridge Street, the buildings up there that he owned.
Yeah.
It had a central steam plant for the whole area.
And there were tunnels that the men could walk through to maintain the pipes if there was a leak in the system. And I don't know if those tunnels are still there, but we peeked into that. That's where we got the picture of the coal. I guess it was a coal burning facility, but you could see the tunnels going off through the walls. But we didn't dare venture in.
The tunnels connect the buildings back there,
Yeah.
the neighbors.
But do they still?
Well, when I was Halloweening as a kid, we'd use the tunnels to go between buildings.
Did you really?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh wow, that's a great piece of news.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the Murdoch family's still around. They live out of town, but they're building a new building right on Forbes Avenue in Oakland, where the old CVS was in there. Before that, there was a grocery store, I think at Giant Eagle, across from the Board of Health. If you
Okay.
look up, the building says Murdoch. They had a Chevrolet dealership in there.
So I didn't know
they've
the
got
Murdochs.
approval to build a new building there now. I think
But
they
you're
live
saying
in
that the
Jersey.
Murdochs were developers, real estate developers?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
They live in New Jersey and they're building a big
Okay.
building in Oakland. And
I
the
didn't
West
know that.
family is still here too.
The what?
The West family.
Wow.
Across from the Marfield, that little building with the chiropractor, the McConnells, was West Real Estate. And that's Franklin West, who owns apartments around here, and his brother. They were the sons of the developer.
Well, you want to come up here and help with this? No, seriously, this is really, this is good information, and I appreciate that, because that's how I learn. So just more and more. I couldn't put, I mean, there's a lot more I could have put in about a lot more buildings that I didn't even have, I had to stop at like 50 minutes when I timed it. So, anyone else? Well, thank you very much. Hope to see you next week. Oh, and if people might just carry their chair over to the doorway so that Tony can take charge of putting them away, I appreciate that. Thank you.